So now let's review a little bit about lines. We're going to look at a couple of these questions on our practice final where we talk a little bit about lines. Because I think these are the ones that students struggle with a little more than some of the others. And we're going to look at question 8 first. So we're going to look, and this is on your practice final. And we're going to look at question 8. There is a very, very similar question on your take-home final, and this is one that will more than likely be on your final as well. Only difference is the numbers will change. That is it. Okay, so we have a chart here. This is looking at the salary of a person over several years. We need to find an equation so that we can plug in the year and get an approximation of their salary. Now we have to make sure that we use the correct points. So here's our table, and let's read the question. So the information in the chart gives the salary of a person for the stated years. Use the information, and here's where you have to be careful, use the information for 2001 and 2003 to make our equation. So we have to use the correct points. We're going to let x equals 1 be 2002. X equals 3 is 2003. Y is going to be the salary. So we want to write the equation in slope-intercept form. And then we want to use this equation to approximate the salary in 2014. Or not 14, 2004. Sorry about that. So 2004. So what are we going to use? Well, we're going to use 2001. And we're going to use 2003. So we've got to come up with our ordered pairs here. So 2001, we use 1 for the x value, and then we go to our chart, and we look up 2001, and the value is 24,600. So that's your y value. X is the year, y is the salary, and we use 1 to represent 2001. We also want 2003, so we're going to use a 3 to represent 2003. And we go to our chart, and our salary is 26,500. What do we do next? Well, think about what we have. We've got 2 points, okay? We want to use the point-slope formula eventually. Remember those flowcharts. If you have 2 points, what do you do? And you can use that flowchart on your final if you want. Okay, if you want to bring that in and use that flowchart, you can use that also. But let's think about what we've got. We've got 2 points. So 2 points we eventually need to get the slope because we want point slope. That's our end game. So we need to find our slope. And so the slope is m. And our formula is m equals y1 minus y2 over x1 minus x2. Rise over run. And let's use some common sense on this question to think about our slope. Is our slope going to be positive or negative? Well, salaries always go up every year, right? Because of inflation. Cost of living every year, you may not go up a lot, but you at least get some sort of a raise, usually. So our slope should be positive. And we're going to label our point x1, y1, and x2 and y2. And we'll plug our values in. So that is 24,600 minus 26,500. And that's going to be over 1 minus 3. And so down below, that's a minus 2, because that one's easy to do. And let's look at our numerator. Well, that's 24,600 minus 26,500. That gives you a difference of negative 1,900. And then we can divide that by your negative 2. And that makes it a positive 950. And while you're working through this one, what does that $950 represent? Well, that $950 means every year, on average, on these 3 years, I get $950 extra. So each year I get $950 extra. Maybe some more, maybe some less, but those 3 years on average are going to give me $950 extra every year. Now we need to come up with our equation so we can predict our salary in the future. So we need to now use point slope. And what's point slope? Well, that is y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. And we've got our slope, which is that 950. And we're going to use that first ordered pair, which is 1, 24,600 for the y component. Remember, this is x1, y1. We did these a while back, but we need to make sure we still remember how they're done. Plug our values in, so that's y minus 24,600. That equals 950 times x minus 1. And we want this one in slope-intercept form. And the answer is wrong in the key. That's why I had to scratch it out and write the correct answer, because it calculates the wrong way. So that's why it's fixed in your key. You're going to distribute that 950 through. And that leaves you with 950x minus 950. The other side is y minus 24,600. We're going to add that 24,600 to each side. And then we're done with the first half. So that gives us our equation then. Y equals now 950x plus, we've got 24,600 minus that 950. That gives you 23,650. Okay. And that's your equation. Now, what else do we want? Well, we want to use this equation now to find the salary in 2004. And it's going to be a little bit different than your actual salary, because you're using this model to predict what it should be. And it's going to be pretty close. So now we want to find the salary in 2004. And so we're going to use x equals 4. We've got our equation. All we have to do is plug it in. So we're going to plug that 4 in. So we've got y equals 950 times 4 plus 23,650. And we'll go ahead and work this out. And what do we get for our salary? 950 times 4 plus that 23,650. That gives you now $27,450. Okay. And that's real close to the $27,200 that you actually got. So you can make a model to kind of predict in the future a little bit. And that's what they use. It's off some because maybe you, in this case, didn't get as much of a raise as what you thought you were going to get. So you got a little bit less, but still, or actually a little bit more. So it's still pretty close to what they have because they got $27,200. When you use your model, you get $27,450. So you got a little bit less. Maybe you didn't get the same bump up in your salary like what you thought you would. But that's what we want on that one. We want you to find the equation and then find the value in another year. In that case, it's 2004. Okay. Another one that we'll look at is question 9. Very, very similar. And you got these worked out, so you can go back and look at them again if you need to. And I'll have this posted also. But question 9 is very similar. We have to find the equation. And what you got in question 9 is you got the point minus 2, and we want that to be parallel to 7x minus 8y equals minus 46. So we want it to be parallel going through that point. Okay, now you can pull out your flow chart. You can use that flow chart on your final if you want. But what do we have? We have a point, right? And a line equation. We want to eventually use the point-slope formula. So we need to find the slope. And we can find the slope from that equation by simply solving it for y. So we'll move that 7x over. And that leaves you then with a minus 8y equals minus 7x minus 46. We'll divide by our negative 8. And that leaves us with our equation. We'll solve for y to be y equals now 7/8 x. And we can reduce this one down a little bit by a factor of 2, I believe. Because that's going to reduce down to be a 23 over 4. And we don't really care about the ending part. All we care about is our slope, which is 7/8. Now this is parallel, so what does it mean if it's parallel? Do we have to change the slope? No, because what are parallel lines? Same slope. Okay, so we move that over, we solved it out, and we got to the point where we have our slope. And let's make sure everything looks right here. Yep, move that 7x over with subtraction, just like we were supposed to, divided it. Double negative, made that then positive. So now we can use our point-slope formula. And what we have is we've got the slope of 7/8. And we also have that point minus 2 minus 2. So that's x1 and y1. And our point-slope formula is y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. And I'm working this one out because this one's difficult, a lot of algebra involved, and I want to make sure we know how these work. And then we'll look at the two set problems after this, just to make sure we have those down. We probably won't have enough time for the absolute values, but you've got them all worked out. And we've done absolute values a lot of times before. So let's plug our values in. Now watch out for double negatives. So that's y minus a minus 2 equals 7/8 times x minus a minus 2. Those double negatives, what do? Make it positive. Now we'll distribute that 7/8 through and then clear out the fractions after that. So that leaves you then with y plus 2 equals 7/8 x plus 7 times 2 makes it 14/8. And you could reduce that down to 7/4, but we're going to clear it out anyways. So it doesn't matter. If you want to reduce it down to 7/4, you can do that, but it's going to be gone in just a moment. Now we do want it in both standard and slope-intercept. And when we talk about standard form, can we have fractions in our standard form? Remember? No, we cannot. Two things you need to remember. Standard form, no fractions, and the x value must be positive. So distribute an 8 through to clear your fractions. And that is then 8y plus 16 equals 7x, because those 8's cancel, plus 14. And we need to get it in both standard and slope-intercept. So it doesn't matter which one we do first. We'll probably get it in standard form first, but it really doesn't matter. So let's go ahead and move things around to get it in standard form. So move that 7x over and move that 16 over as well. Okay, so doing that, we now have a minus 7x plus 8y equals a negative 2. Be very, very careful. Is that in standard form? Yes or no? It's almost there, right? Now, if you left this like this on the exam, each question is worth 10 points, so I would probably take off 2 points. So you don't want to do that. We do not want to ever begin with a negative number in standard form, negative x value. So it's not quite there, so use a negative and distribute it through. Then we have our answer in standard form, which is 7x minus 8y equals 2. And that is in now standard form. We also want it in slope-intercept. So how do we get it in slope-intercept? This is standard. How do we get it in slope-intercept? We take our standard form and we just go ahead and solve it for y. So move the 7x over. That leaves you with a minus 8y equals a minus 7x minus 2. Divide by your negative 8. And now we've got our slope-intercept form, which when we reduce it down is 7/8 x. Negative and negative makes it a positive, and reduce that 2/8 down to 1. And here's the other one in slope-intercept form. So you got it both standard and you have it in slope-intercept. Oh, wait, make sure I didn't make a mistake with the sign. Oh, I did. Well, let's see. Nope, everything looks right. Yep, I think I did it all correct. So everything's right there. We've got our correct signs. So, make sure I copied it. Oop, I did make a mistake. That should be positive. I was wondering why the key didn't match up. Remember, that should be positive. Sorry about that. And that's going to then make that a negative, because I just copied it down wrong. Right? It should be a positive 2 there instead of a negative. So that was my mistake. Okay, so we got all to there. and solved it and got it in slope-intercept form. There are two more questions that are very, very easy, and I want us to get these correct. So there's two more that we're going to look at that we haven't really talked a lot about, but they're so easy, it's basically free points. And that is question 15 and also question 23. These are going to be on your final, and they're about the easiest questions on the final, and I want to make sure that we get these points. So question 15. We give you a set of numbers. So we've got A and B. And then we want to work with an operation on these numbers. And we want to find A union B. And that's a union, and that means we combine them together. Remember, we talked a little bit about unions when we did our inequality. Union is like a marriage. Everything gets combined together. So when you marry someone else, your belongings get combined. Now, when we write out our answer, we don't write duplicate values more than once. So what we want is we want to write all the numbers that they have combined together. And if it's a duplicated value, like, for example, that 6, we only write it once. So that U stands for union, and that's uniting the sets together. Duplicate values are only wrote once. So if I put those together, then what do we have when we combine them? Well, combining them, we get a 4. The 6, we only write that 6 one time. Then we've got a 12. The 16 gets written one time. 23 and 29, right? So that is A union B. Put them together. That's it. One of the easiest questions on your final will be this type of question. Different numbers, that's it. Question 23 is just the opposite. So question 23, we want to use an intersection. So question 23, we've got the set A, which is 2, 6, 10, 18, and 20, and the set B, which is 6, 18, 20, and 26. So that's what we've got. And we want to go ahead now and we want to combine these together. Now, when we combine them together, we use a U for union. I'll just make sure we got everything covered here. Yep. We use a U for union or an upside down U for an intersection. So we want A intersect B. And that upside down U is an intersection. And that's where they overlap. Okay, so we're going to look at where they overlap. A right side up U is union, and we combine them together. Think of a union as a marriage. Okay, everything goes together. An upside down U is an intersection. So that's where streets cross. Okay, it's what they have in common. So we're looking at where they overlap. And what numbers overlap in both? What do they have in common in both? Well, they both have a 6, they both have an 18, and they both have a 20. And that would be your answer. So that's it. You're looking for where they overlap. I think now we've covered everything that we need to. And so next week is our final exam. So next week is our final, and let's make sure we know what we can bring to our final. Now you need to make sure that you turn in all the homework. So it has to all be turned in. Now stop at 5-2. You do not have to do 5-3, 4, or 5. We normally cover those, but we did miss several class periods because of weather, and Monday's classes always start later too. So stop at 5-2. Turn everything else in. If you're missing an exam and you haven't finished it, it's in my mailbox, so make sure you get that done. If you haven't turned in old homework from Chapter 2, make sure that's turned in. Make sure your homework from Chapter 4 and 5 are turned in. So our final is going to be next week. And what do we need to make sure that we bring for our final? Well, you can have either a page of notes, or note cards. You can also bring in that flow chart if you want to. If you think you need to bring in that flow chart, you can bring that in as well for lines. If you think you need to bring that. You want to make sure you bring your own calculator. If you don't have one, I can get you one. But if you've been using the same calculator, you'll do a lot better if you just bring that calculator to class and use that one instead of a different one, because you don't want to change things when you take your final. So you want to make sure you bring your calculator. And scratch paper as well. Now, if something happens and you absolutely cannot make it to your final, do not just not take your final. Contact me as soon as you can, and we can find a time later in the week for you to do it. Now, ideally, everyone needs to be here. But if something happens that is out of your control, if you're sick, or let's say something happens and you just can't make it to class, get a hold of me as soon as possible, and I'll let you make it up later on that week. And if you're sick, do not show up to class. So if you're sick and you're running a fever, or you just don't feel well, send me an email. We can find a time later on that week for you to take that exam. Because if you're sick, you won't do as well, and nobody else wants to be sick. So if something like that happens, do not just not take your final. If you don't take your final, that's a lot of points, and it's going to drop your grade a lot. So if something happens, get a hold of me as soon as you can, like next Monday or Tuesday. Let me know, okay, I couldn't make it. We'll find a time to schedule your final later on in the week. But ideally, be here. Very important that you're here, but if something happens and you're sick or something happens out of your control, it's not the end of the world. Just do not take your final. Contact me. We can find a time to work together for you to take your final exam, because I do not want to have to put a 0 in for your final. All right, so that should be it for today, and I will see everyone then next week, and that'll be our final class meeting. And I do think that I've got some homework to pass back also.